Hey there, this is my Project Runway recap. Let's see where we at. Season 13, Episode 3, Welcome to the Future. So I know that 20 of you watched my recap last week, so whew. But I'm going to keep going, so we're going to go with it. So my husband is back to watching the show with me. Part of our dating ritual was for me to force my husband to watch every season of Project Runway with me, and he stuck it through, so clearly he loves me dearly. I like to watch it with him. He's really dead on. He's actually very, very, very good. He would make a great guest host, guest judge. He was gone. We had a family illness and he was not in town for a few weeks. And instead I had one of my little dogs sit and growl at the screen. But anyway, John's back. So I'll throw out his input as well. So great challenge. I liked the episode. Despite the length, I had to take a nap halfway through the show. It took us like 3 days to watch it. It's a good challenge. It makes a lot of sense as a challenge because all clothes that you see reference back to different time periods. You know, nothing's really new. And I'm constantly going to the mall and I saw crop tops, which are super 80s. So it's a good challenge. And of course we had all the fun of seeing where everyone was. Anyway, they got their first trip to Mood, and we hear from Amanda how she has such an advantage because she's been to Mood before. My husband is totally over her talking about herself. I still like her, but, you know, if John doesn't like her, she may be kind of a villain. We're going to have to see. We see lots of dark colors. We have our Tim walkthrough. Are you sure about that? I'm not so sure about that design. And everybody does that. What I liked about this episode is that the drama really came from the design. Is this going to work? You know, we skip the uniboob. Oh my gosh, how is he going to deal with it? And it really came from that. Angela is just a mess this whole way through. Let's see. We see some great stuff. We get through. Everybody walks. The problem with judging this challenge, though, is, you know, it's the future. So it kind of ends up being more about story, which if you saw in season 1, they did a kind of similar future collection. And it ended up, and part of that episode they talked about was the story, like a really good story ended up kind of carrying the design because you could talk people into it. Now, my husband has a real problem with Sandia, more so than I do. And I think part of that has to do with her story. She's very articulate and she has a very interesting perspective that I personally am interested in for political reasons. So she's from India. Her aesthetic is really kind of a big FU to the man, which if you've been following what's happening to women in India, ideologically, I'm like, right on, sister. I want to hear you, you know, tell them where they can stick it and all that. Doesn't mean that necessarily I agree with her design. I wouldn't have worn anything. In this particular instance, she had that dress with like a centipede on it. I will say that the way that she constructed the centipede was excellent. So she deserved points for that. And her discussion of what was happening was very good. Okay. And that's it. And unfortunately, I don't feel like those are things that should really carry a design. I felt, and my husband felt like she should have been in the bottom, but those things should have saved her. Or in the middle because they don't like the design, it's really not that interesting, but she had some really good ideology and her construction was good on those particular elements. However that goes. But anyway, she was in the top. Angela, she had a suit. She was in the bottom. I felt like they were much harder on her. And I don't like this thing where they call out people that are safe. They did it with Amanda this week. And I feel like if she was that bad, she should have just been in the bottom. They should discuss why she was that bad. But, you know, that was really rare. They didn't used to do that. And this is the second time in 3 episodes they've called out someone who is safe. I really feel like just because it made a good storyline. So having Amanda be safe and then tell her how awful her design was, but with no additional information, I'm not liking it. Telling Angela last week that her design was awful, but her partners carried her, I think it's just to kind of get in their head. So anyway, Angela's in the bottom. I felt they gave her a little harder time than she deserved. Emily was in the top. She had the jumpsuit, the kind of Ewok jumpsuit. I really liked it. I was kind of with Nina though that it was okay. It wasn't that great. You know, the model did do a good job, but I liked it. I would right now buy that jacket thing. Absolutely. Alexander was in the bottom. He had the whole second dress. I didn't think it was quite as bad. At least it was kind of interesting. There were some execution problems, but I didn't think it was that bad. Sean was in the bottom. He had that awful hat and that blue weird dress with, which my husband thought was he was offended by how awful that outfit was. I didn't like it, but he was like, get that thing off my screen. And this is really funny. If you met my husband, you would find this even funnier. He's a rancher, he's got a big beard, he's got short hair, he's like a guy's guy through and through, and he very seldom speaks. So for him to be that passionate about an outfit was pretty funny. Now, the other top was Christina, who had the green jacket that kind of had the things. Really liking Christina as she's been flying. Real quiet. We've barely seen anything from her. So I knew she was going to at least make it to the middle, because if you don't hear from someone, they're going to stay around. That is a Project Runway rule. Every dog gets their day. So before you get home, you're going to have some behind the scenes. We're going to hear more about your background. We're going to hear your story. So if there's someone and you go, I don't even know who this person is, I don't really know much about them, trust me, they're safe for another week. Okay? Now, Angela ends up going home. It's probably for the best. I don't think this is really the place for her. I like her designs. Okay, just to be clear. So, Angela, if by some random chance you see this, I'm not saying you're bad. I just don't think this was really the best place for you. It was clearly not the best way for you to work. I felt like they only cast you because they knew you'd be kind of a wreck. So, all of that. Now, Sandia won, and I'm not okay with that either. Once again, I like her. I like her aesthetic. I think she has something valuable to add to the collective fashion world. I just don't necessarily think this design was the best that there was. That's all there is to it. And what I dread is, I feel like they're setting her up for this disappointment. You know, they have her in this real high, then this real low, and this real high, and I feel like the highs aren't justified and the lows aren't justified. So her real high points, I go, yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad she had that walk the runway. I'm glad I got to see it, but it wasn't the best design there. Same thing with her low last week. It wasn't the worst design, and she really kind of did what her partners wanted her to do. She tried. I don't think it was the best choice, but, well, I mean, I think it was the best choice because she had immunity, so she went along with it. Same thing this week. I don't think she deserved to win, but it was interesting. What I feel like is I feel like they're setting her up. Like when you watch Carrie, and there's nothing really wrong. Well, I haven't really watched Carrie, but, you know, they really set her up, and she's prom queen, and they dump the pig's blood. I kind of feel like what they're doing. They're really setting her up, and then because they want to drop pig's blood on her later on. And it makes me nervous, and it makes me hesitant about the show. So there you go. So that is my recap, and hopefully I get a few more people to watch this week. You're probably all over there watching the Jersey Belle recap. So see you soon.